It just makes it tough.
Insane that they can put something on a dangerous list with no evidence.
Yeah, I know.
That's wild.
I know.
I mean, it just seems like clear-cut corruption.
Yeah.
And because of the power of the insurance companies and the power of the pharmaceutical drug companies.
Well, and then where I get frustrated is I've been to Oz, Joe. I've been behind the fucking curtain. I know. I was a device rep. I was a drug rep. I stood in surgeries from dusk till dawn watching products that have never had human safety trials go into the body time and time again. When people think that going into an orthopedic surgery or going into a general surgery or going into an OB-GYN surgery, you make the assumption that all these products have been through human safety studies and all this stuff. And I talked about this on our last podcast too, but over 90% of the products that are in the operating room never went through human safety studies. The FDA created what's called the 510K approval process in the 70s. They said, it's growing too fast. We're bogged down. We can't get to all this shit. Now you're bolting on all these extra products in addition to drugs. And now we're talking biologics. And let's not even get into AI and large language models. You know, to their credit, they're doing their best to navigate a really tough space with a lot of different stuff coming at them. And so they created a loophole. And the premise was less than 10% of the products would come through this channel to get into the operating room. Jump forward to today, and 92% of the products in the operating room came in through the 510K approval process. And what is that process? What it says is, if you can show something in like kind is already in the operating room, then you can do what's called a daisy chain. So imagine iPhone 1 versus the new iPhone, right? That's what we're talking about here. Imagine Henry Ford's car versus Elon Musk's Cybertruck. That's the difference, and it's moving at a breakneck speed. And it's shocking that there's not more adverse events, but we also know that less than 2% of adverse events get reported. And so I can give you a real-world example on that, too. When I was a rep, there were shavers that kept continually changing, right? And it's a blade that goes in the shoulder, and they'd clean up your shoulder and cut out tissue. That tissue has to get sucked through a cannulated component of the shaver handpiece and pumped into a vacuum and disposed of and discarded of the bad tissue, the tissue that you wanted to extrapolate. As the technology changed and the shaver handpieces got smaller and smaller, a lot of these companies didn't update their packaging inserts. And so they didn't update their sterile processing procedures. And so what happened is tissue began to gunk up in handpieces. And this was not unique to one company. I'm not going to say the company's names, and I'm not going to name the hospitals. But there's a company that took the fall for it. But in reality, I was the rep, and I went in and helped that hospital figure out what was going on. And I took a camera and I scoped every cannulated piece of equipment that I could find. All of it had tissue in it. Gunked up tissue from previous surgeries in that. And so when you take this product from one surgery to the next surgery to the next surgery, we know that certain bacteria are extremophiles. They can handle, so they autoclave it. And all that is to purify it. It's called clean dirt, right? The debate at the time was, is there such thing as clean dirt? If we run it through a sterile processing machine and we cook it at thousands and thousands of degrees, nothing can survive that, right? No, bacteria is an extremophile. It can fucking make it from outer space on a meteorite and crash onto Earth, you know? These are some of the most resilient life forms in the history of existence.
Well, prions, the things that cause mad cow disease, you could cook them at thousands of degrees and they stay alive.
Well, and this is where it gets even scarier. So whether we're talking about, like with stem cells, one of the big things that's happened is when they throw out adverse events, even with the stem cells or biologics products, almost all of those adverse events have nothing to do with the product and everything to do with the chain of command. So look at how rigorous the chain of command is on me as a compounding pharmacy. I told you, step by step by step, check, balance, check, balance, check, balance. None of that exists in big medical. None of it. I was a device rep with shavers, pumps, equipment, implants in my trunk of my car in 110-degree weather. It wasn't just me. Every rep carries product called trunk stock. Drug reps carry product called trunk stock. They put drugs in the trunk of their car and drive around and give them to clinicians to use for samples. But those products aren't being climate controlled in the way they're supposed to be. There's no chain of command. There's no chain of custody. So I'll give you another crazy, and I'm saying all this not to bash one company or bash anybody in particular. It's just the truth, Joe. It's the fucking truth. And when the FDA says we're worried about safety on a peptide that's a naturally occurring amino acid, I call bullshit. Because I go, then where were you when all this other stuff was happening? I was in a surgery at the Houston Zoo where I watched a shaver handpiece being used on a tiger, and it had green tape wrapped around it. Okay? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. It had green tape. Jump forward 2 months later, I'm in a human surgery, and I see a shaver handpiece with green tape. And I thought, man, that's wild. It can't be. So I checked the serial number, same damn serial number that was in that tiger surgery.
What?
Same serial number. At the time, what was happening is if a loaner went out, it would go out to a animal surgery, veterinary clinic. There's no way to differentiate, right? So a count number is an account number, right? And so they ship out a loaner and they would use that and then they'd ship it back. But okay, but they're going to process it, clean it, sterilize it. You never should be doing that in the first place. But I've already told you now how the packaging inserts don't explain properly how to clean out these instruments. And it's not one company. It's not one product. It's thousands of products.
So a human patient could have been potentially contaminated with bacteria from a tiger.
100%. 100%.